And we are back with another episode of Fly and the Other Guy. We're recording this on a new podcast software because the last one has let us down. We've had a little bit of technical difficulties. Let's hope, let's hope we don't waste the next hour of our life.
Yeah, I hope so. We had a rocky start. This is the second take, so
Yeah.
so far I can hear you, so this is going well.
This is positive. Big stuff going on, man. Really big stuff. The first DP season's already over, or already almost over. One last week left. If this was last year, you guys would be hitting the midway point.
Yeah, it was crazy to think that I'm basically done in 6 days. I think something like that, 6-7 days. It's going by so fast, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, like we've talked about before. It's fun to watch. You get multiple games a week. You guys had an interesting week. We'll get into it. You went 3-0.
Yeah.
It was an interesting 3-0 to say the least.
There were some close games in there. You could say
there were some things we'll
made
touch
it interesting.
On. Yeah. But you guys obviously have the big week ahead of you. You got Nouns and you've got TSM. I believe if you beat Nouns, you clinch a major spot.
Yeah. We should be secured if we us and TSM will be secured if we beat Nouns.
Yeah. Before we get into that, you guys had so in between week 2 and week 3, you had a little bit of an off day today.
Today was off day. Yesterday we had a very busy day of shooting some content.
Okay.
Which obviously I can't say what it is exactly. I'll just say it was a very big deal because it took the whole day. I don't know if some people may have watched the stories that we posted. We had to wake up at something like 6:30 a.m., which is very early for gamers.
Yeah. Aren't those the
and
gym? Aren't those your
like 6?
Aren't those your hashtag time in gym hours?
Almost. So I wake up at like 7:30. A little better, but. So yeah, some exciting stuff coming that I can't say too much about, but yeah, it's big stuff.
It's cool. I think Shopify they're really into to pushing some content, which I think is awesome for the fans, right? I mean, they're also in this level of brand building where they need to
Exactly.
kind of get their name out there because they're a newer org, and I think making content like that is a great way to go.
Yeah, I mean, Shopify is a very young organization, so everything that's being built right now, I think they've only been around for like 2 years. So this is like a whole new process, and now having, we're probably their biggest team that they've had thus far. Well, not probably, we are. So there's a lot of cool content that I think they have planned that we want to do together. So it's only going to get better.
That's exciting. So then you had the off day today. So, I mean, how many off, you have like what, 1 or 2 off days a week?
Usually once a week, yeah.
Okay.
That's more.
How do you try to utilize the off day?
We don't really have any rules for people to do anything, so people can do whatever if they want. I think some guys want to stream, like Crit, for example. I might want to go out and eat, at least get out of the office for a little bit, but I still end up hanging around the office for most of the time. And I also had Ebony come up this weekend, so she was with me here today until she had to leave around 5 o'clock. So I got to spend a little bit of time with her before, the biggest week we have left for us.
Yeah.
And
just listen to yourself, man. I just try to get out of the office for a couple hours, a little bit of a time. You can't get away from the office. You're this corporate lackey, man.
I know. I love the office. What can I do?
Got to stay away. Toronto's treating you well?
Yeah, Toronto's nice. It hasn't been too cold, so you could actually walk outside. It's a cool city. It's a cool city. It's lots of good food places.
What's your go-to food spot so far?
I've been trying different things all the time. I've had some really good Thai food. I've had some really good Japanese food, even some Middle Eastern. I'm just trying everything right now.
Nice. Yeah, it makes me a little sad that I'm living in the suburbs. There's some decent food, in the suburbs around here, but nothing like walking around in a city with like many different cultures and just overall good food.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get into the week 2 review. What was the mood of the team throughout this week?
So, I'll be honest, it's a bit hard to find motivation when you're playing against teams like Alpha and 5rat. It's not that you're gonna treat them poorly or like how you're gonna prepare for them or anything like that, but it is, in the back of your mind that these guys are probably not as good as you.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to find some way to get some motivation. So when you go into those games, you take it serious because you can't really afford to lose. If you lose one single match pretty much a single match in NA DPC, you're looking into tiebreakers, and you have to win everything else. That's how it works in NA DPC.
Yeah.
So yeah, a little challenging, I think.
Yeah, so you started off with games against Alpha and 5rat, and like both of those were very similar. Where, I don't want to say it was like you were messing around, but there was like the casters were kind of making some jokes about how you guys were playing it. It seemed a little sloppy, I think. The games, neither of those games were ever in doubt, but as I'm watching, I'm like, do you worry about like bad habits forming in games like that because you don't have to be laser focused? Like I'm watching this and I'm like, it seems like, maybe somebody's dying here where it probably shouldn't have happened. So do you worry about that kind of thing of bad habits forming in those types of games?
So I wouldn't say it's bad habits that are forming. I think it's really just focus.
Mm-hmm.
That you're not as focused. You're not as into the game as you would against a better opponent, because it basically our brain is telling us you don't have to be 100% for this. You can kind of chill a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that's what happens. We start having clowny deaths, or we're not really aware of what the enemy's doing. And it's like you said, because there's really no doubt that we're gonna win this game, right? Mm-hmm. Until almost happened where we didn't actually win.
Yeah, and then the bait game, right? The game one, the Dota Plus, they threw it up on the screen at one point. I think you guys were like 45% to win towards like late game, right? It was a 47-minute game, and there was that point in the game where they had the Aegis, right? They were going high ground, and if this is probably another team, you might not, like a more polished team, you might not be able to get out of that situation. You guys were definitely behind in that moment. Now, skill-based, you may say that, they weren't really going to be able to break your high ground, but it's still a dicey game.
Yeah, I don't think we were feeling very comfortable in that situation. The pressure is on us. Everyone kind of expected us to win. You have that in the back of your mind, even if you're telling yourself, don't come in this expecting that you're going to stomp them.
Mm-hmm.
So the early game was going well against Bait, and I think we were winning all our lanes. We were something like 6k up pretty early in the game, mm-hmm. which usually is a sign you're going to win. And then Dendi came into the picture with his signature Witch Doctor middle, which is funny because during the draft, they picked this Witch Doctor, and I think somebody said, I don't remember who, someone said, yeah, he usually plays this in pubs. He buys a Blink shard and just kills people. And Dendi doesn't care about killing creeps. He only cares about killing heroes. And I will say our lack of focus definitely kicked in, and, they took advantage of it. So props to Dendi and Bait. But we were getting killed everywhere. The game was starting to turn. We were not feeling very comfortable, for sure. Like, when they were pushing our high ground, they probably could have just choked us out if they really thought about it, because it's pretty hard for him to go high ground that game. Lena's like sitting back there and shooting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they definitely could have won that game.
You guys picked Slardar in there, and it was obviously a tough game for Saberlight. And then I looked through, and that was the only time Slardar was picked so far in the NADPC or Western EU. Does that, you don't have to get into specifics of like hero strats and stuff, but do you like how does he get picked in that? It just felt like a good matchup, or something that you guys wanted to try out?
Yeah, I don't think the hero is particularly good right now. It's just mm-hmm. that we saw Lifestealer. And everybody knows that Slardar is very good against Lifestealer because he kicks him out of lane. He has a piercing, magic immunity spell. So it's just a good matchup against Lifestealer. That was pretty much it. But it is a very different hero. He's almost like a carry from the offlane. Like the old Amar on OG, right? He used to play Slardar. It's basically a carry.
Got you.
So it's a bit different than what we usually play.
Yeah. So going to the most important week, right? You come out of that. You come out of a week where not the cleanest performance, but you go 3-0. What message does like Bulba give the team to try to refocus everybody and get you prepared for these final two matches?
Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to have our final practice day before we play Nouns. And I think everybody knows it in the back of their minds that this is what we've been working on this entire time that we spent here. It really is for these two matches. I mean, yeah, it sounds like I'm throwing shade at the other people, but realistically, that is what we're here for. You know, Nouns and TSM are the real challenge in NADPC. So all of us are pretty hyped up about it. Like, you know, finally we're gonna get tested, right? If what we're doing is good, what we're doing is bad. Hopefully we're doing something good. So Bulba definitely, you know, he has more prepared for our practice sessions to make sure we're on the same page and that we're ready in terms of strategy and in terms of how we're going to play and all that. So there's definitely that feeling of like we're finally getting a fight, you know? That's the feeling that I'm getting right now.
You know, when you look back on it now at all to get to this point, right? It's almost like having a week like last week was a good thing, right? No losses, but it wasn't like the cleanest, so it makes everybody kind of refocus and get ready.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot be lazy. You know, especially when it comes to these teams. If we're going to play like we did the past week, you know, very good chance we're going to lose. So, yeah, I'm all in for it.
So so like we talked about, it feels like if you win against Nouns, then you guys clinch the major spot. I mean, obviously there's still going to be DPC points, so, you know, you're still going to want to take first overall. But, you know, obviously step one is against Nouns. What do you think is going to be like the biggest challenge that Nouns will present to you guys?
I think Gunner is actually a really good player. I think he's one of the only players, especially in NA, who's, you know, NA is kind of known to be AFK and do nothing and just go for the late game.
Yeah.
But Gunner is not like that. He's, I don't know what to call him, but he's a very aggressive player. I've seen his Tusk against TSM, and he almost single-handedly won the games for his team. He is just constantly a threat on the map, and he doesn't give up at all. I've watched the streams, you know. They could be hitting his throne. It's 50k down with 0% chance of winning, and the guy still thinks he has hopes of winning the game, which is a pretty rare quality, I gotta
absolutely.
say. So commendable. So, yeah, I think Gunner is kind of the make or break for that team.
So he kind of sets the tone for them, right?
Yeah, which is often what mid laners do, right? They're kind of the tempo setters of the game, like what the mid laner is going to do is going to change the outcome of the game the most in the early game. But also, he feels like almost like a captain for that team as well. At least that's the feeling I get. I don't actually have an insight on their team. So, yeah, that even amplifies it more, right?
So these guys, so now it's TSM, right? They've added some new guys. It seems like Lelis, right? Added to Nouns seems to be a good addition. Any new impressions of how he's fitting in? Maybe about how Ari, Kasane seems so far like both teams have dealt with their shuffles and were able to kind of to add some strong players.
Yeah. So first of all, you know, I love Z-Freak. I'm a bit sad he's not on a team anymore. I'm friends with him and his brothers. I spend time with them playing other games. So
is that B-Freak?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I watched your stream one time and I saw B-Freak. I was like, wait, that sounds familiar. But then, so B-Freak and Z-Freak. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, shout out to him and the whole family. They're all just a bunch of awesome dudes.
Is there like an R-Freak? Is there other freaks?
There's an A-Freak,
okay,
which I don't really know that well. There's G-Freak, which is the youngest one. He's also insanely buff right now, and he's also streaming. So you guys make sure you check it out. Check his Twitter. I think G-Freak. Shout out to him. A-Freak, Z-Freak, B-Freak, G-Freak, and Kyle.
Are they all brothers?
They're all brothers, yeah.
Oh, wow. Poor Kyle. Maybe he just wants to be different, you know? He doesn't want to be K-Freak. Yeah.
He's the oldest one, so maybe that's why, you know, he's like, I'm not part of your games. So, anyways, shout out to him. But I know Lilith, did end up playing for Nouns, and I think he brings a lot of experience to that team. Because Quincy has been to, you know, plenty of majors and TIs. Lilith has played in those, and I think Nouns hasn't really been in too many lands. So having somebody who experienced qualifying and winning, I think that can bring a lot to a team. It can bring them confidence. It can bring them new ideas. So it's definitely something that's going to help that team. And that's what it looks like. And as for TSM, right? Kasani and Ari and Whitemon,
Yeah.
right? Those are the new players. So I think Ari is really good. He's one of the. I think a lot of people looked at him after TI as one of the up and coming players because he rose up in the ranks like crazy. He used to play, I think, Heroes of the Storm or something. He went into Dota, and like a year later, he's a top player already. So that's really impressive. That tells you something. So I think that was like an easy choice for them.
Yeah. Let's take a look around the rest of the DPC because we're winding up. We're winding everything up. We're coming into the end of the first DPC tour, which means the major is coming up. We always love to check in with Western EU, and we always love to point out that Liquid's domination just continues. They seem to be outside of at least in NA and Western EU and even Eastern EU. I think they're the only team so far to clinch a major spot. They are undefeated. They did drop a game against Game and Gladiators today, but they ended up winning the series. I did notice something interesting. They picked Brood 3 times. I thought, isn't Brood a Wraith Pack hero, or was a Wraith Pack hero?
So Brood is one of the most contested heroes right now.
Okay.
And most of the time she's just banned, like straight up just banned. Maybe not in SCA, I'm not sure. I haven't kept track of them that well, but at least in Western Europe and NA, Brood is usually first picked or just banned.
But like where it wasn't Brood a Wraith Pack hero? Still good, I guess.
Yeah, basically Guardian Greaves has replaced the Wraith Pact.
Oh,
so
great.
There's just a different aura item that you buy, and Brood seems to be a really good, choice for that. So she's a super popular hero. The interesting thing is that Gaming Gladiators decided to play against it 3 times, right?
Yeah,
that's something most teams aren't really willing to try.
Do you ever get bored? Like, so even if they give you something, they give you the thing that you want to do, you'll take it 3 times in a row if they keep giving it to you.
So that's interesting because you think about it when you go to a LAN tournament. Sometimes what happens is somebody's going to try to break your strategy. So they're going to give you the hero you're best at, like I'm the best, whatever, Doombringer player in the world or the Doom team. And they give it to you and then they beat you. And then you're just mentally, you're going to be in the struggle for a little bit. Like, everything I thought was good is not good. And you have, 5 minutes to decide what you're going to do now. Like, are you going to try it again or are you going to, give up on it? So that's always an interesting way to do, like to strategize and try to beat something.
Yeah, I mean, Liquid seems to have just like uber level confidence where they're just like, all right, we'll take it. You're going to leave it there.
Yeah.
We'll take it every time. But I feel like teams that are a little bit more unsure, like, all right, they win it and then they get it again. Like, all right, well, let's do something different. Like they keep giving it to us.
Yeah, there's different ways you can approach. But Liquid, yeah, like you said, they're on a roll right now. I can feel the confidence just watching them play. Like, they don't think they can lose type of thing. That's the feeling I get. And that's a very good spot for a team to be like because that's just domination. That's what it is.
Speaking of Game and Gladiators, like I said, they did take a game off Liquid, did lose the series, but even though they're 3-2, I've been impressed so far with what they've been doing. And I don't know if you saw, but they throw out an offlane Witch Doctor and against Nigma, and it worked. It was this healing just bot out there. So a very unique strat. Like, what are your thoughts on when to reveal like a unique strat like that? They do it in the DPC. I feel like I guess for Western EU it's so contested that it doesn't make sense to hold things back. But ideally, when do you think when's it okay to reveal very unique strats like that?
I think when we're playing the DPC, I think you don't hold anything back because by the time the major comes around, maybe there will be a patch. Maybe things will evolve. You're going to have a couple of weeks. So I think if you see the opening for it, this is probably something that they scrimmed with. I'm assuming, right? I don't know for sure. But I feel like they scrimmed this before. It worked out and they're like, okay, let's go for it, And it worked out again. It looked hilarious, right? I'm sure some people memed it in their games and ruined other people's pubs after that. Maybe Dendi got inspired when he saw the Witch Doctor off and then he was like, okay, I'll play it middle,
So then, so Dendi tries it out. I mean, is this something that then, was this something that you were aware of before, like this was done?
I was aware that Gaming Gladiators played it, but I didn't think anybody would be crazy enough to do to do it again. It was like a IO Witch Doctor strategy. So the combination of them, the amplify heal, so nobody dies. Then you played it a different way. He was like the killer Witch Doctor. He would go in there, blink in, just drop the Maledict ulti, try to kill people. So it was like a different style.
Gotcha.
Which I play that hero a lot, so I kind of get what he's trying to
That's
do.
what I mean. This is all good things for you, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
gives you a new flex hero, right? You pick the Witch Doctor. Maybe Fly's playing 5. Maybe it's gonna be off lane.
I think Saber would actually be down. I'm not sure about Abed if I tell him, it's time for you to play Watch Doctor, buddy. He might just not want to do it, but I feel like Saber would be totally down.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is one of the coolest things about Dota, right? Is just the very random strats that come out of nowhere that someone has a cool idea, and then seeing it work on on a pretty high level.
Yeah, and Dota's cool like that. We can do anything.
Just looking around Western EU a little bit more. Secret gets a win. They put them in a pretty good position. They beat Into the Breach. Puts them in a decent position. I think if they beat Nigma and Into the Breach loses to Gaiman, then they'll have steadied the ship enough to avoid relegation. I noticed in their games that they won both their games against today with Tree and Protector. Seems to be a pretty high priority hero right now. So like what's making him such a good pick?
Yeah, so Tree is one of those heroes that's been slowly buffed and buffed and buffed every single patch to the point where some of his spells are really ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens sometimes when, the dev team or Ice Frog, whoever's doing the balancing, they're like, hey, you guys should try this hero. And then it gets ignored. And I give it a little extra push, a little 1 armor in there or something. You guys should try this hero. And Tree's been pushed enough that to the point where he is just a very strong pick right now. His second spell, I think it's called Leech Seed. It feels very powerful in lane where you can take good trades. And just the way that the hero is played, when you play on like more of a defensive style, right? You have the living armor, you're going to protect your towers. It's something that Puppy has been really good at before, like taking it kind of a slow type of game. So I think it fits him specifically, and I think it fits his team, or at least his old ideology. So this hero is definitely very contested right now.
So that style of a hero being buffed happens a lot, where it's almost like they reach a tipping point where the Tree was probably playable a couple patches ago, but there wasn't enough people trying it out. Like people weren't really giving it a shot, and then they continue to buff it, and then it's like, oh wait, they probably added 3 or 4 too many, and now he's very good.
Yeah, that
Once
definitely
people catch
happens. Yeah. And it also happens the other way around, where they would nerf a hero a little bit, and that hero gets completely ignored when the hero is still fine, really. And that does happen too. People they're pretty impressionable, I think.
Yeah. The metas in video games is a very interesting thing. As someone who, as we've talked about over and over again, is completely addicted to Marvel Snap. There's a meta game in there too, where I think there's something like at this point over 100 cards with different abilities, and it's like the meta gets pushed, and there's all these old cards that people kind of forget about, right? And they're still good, and they'll get little buffs here and there in different patches, and you kind of have to take a second and get away from the groupthink mentality and be like, oh wait, is this, and actually test it out. And sometimes just going against the meta provides this kind of unexpected advantage. You catch people off guard. So it's always fun in video games to try to outsmart the meta game, because like the meta game is like this group thing.
I agree.
Everyone's just doing the same
Dota.
thing. Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. Anything else across the DPC? We're going into the last week.
Nothing really. The SCA is crazy, but I don't even know what's going on there anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Fnatic looks like, and that's a good team, right? I mean, we've touched on it before, but Gabby, Armel, DJ, all these guys have been around, and they're 0-5. I'm not even sure they can get out.
Yeah, SEA is just brutal because you really have no idea what's gonna happen. Yeah, you would think you look at SEA, you think Fnatic would be one of the favorites, to get at least top four.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, you have these other teams like Execration and Geek Slate. I think March is coaching one of those two teams, so maybe that played into them doing so well. But yeah, it's just that region has been very surprising.
Yeah, and then I mean, what I'm looking forward to is at the next major is I want to see Bet Boom, go against all
Oh
the
yeah,
other teams. Like you just have this this team that I can only imagine what the comms are like. I mean, they all probably all super intense and just very good Dota going on, and I want to see them go against other teams, like other top tier teams in Western EU and like in you guys and stuff, and just see. I don't know. I'm kind of afraid of them. I kind of think that they've got them and Liquid might be my two favorites going into. I mean, obviously I'm not gonna be biased and choose you guys, but outside of the NA region.
I think those are pretty fair choices. I'm excited to see how Bet Boom will fare against Team Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been watching some of Eastern Europe, and it almost feels like SEA in a way where a lot of the teams are, pretty close in skill level. However, you do have two teams that really stand out, which in this case is Team Spirit and Bet Boom. They've had some games which were pretty close, some 3-game series, but I think they're still undefeated. Bet Boom, that is. And yeah, like you said, I feel the intensity just watching them. And that's a very intense group of players,
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I don't know who's making these scheduling choices, whether it's Valve or whether it's the tournament directors, but it feels like they've done a good job of putting anticipating what the good matchups are going to be and putting them at the end. I mean, the literal last game of the Eastern European DPC is Team Spirit versus Bet Boom.
Yeah, I think that was kind of their plan, whoever did it. The only question really is that if having some of those matches earlier on could be more interesting in terms of how the points are going to be at the end, because at the last match there's a high chance that these teams have both already qualified. For example, it could be the case for us in TSM. It's possible.
Yeah,
And then maybe that takes away from the hype.
I mean, but if you do think about it, right? Like if you think about last year's TI, how important every single DPC point was, right? I mean, you
That's
had a
true.
team that, what was it, 0.3 was left out?
It was a point something, which
Point
is pretty
something.
insane.
So, I mean, even if you have two teams that are going into it that are tied and they've already clinched a spot to the major, one, you have your pride on the line. You're not going to just not try your hardest against the other best team. Like, let's say you guys clinch and you play TSM, like you're still going to want to beat TSM and send a message. And same thing with Bet Boom versus Team Spirit, and then throw in the DPC points. Like I think it's fine. I think it sets up for a situation where you're gonna be hyped for those end games anyway. But yeah, this is good stuff. And then when's the major? In a couple weeks. If you guys qualify.
I think it's February 22nd or something, 22nd, 23rd. So it's actually pretty close.
Are there any like third party tournaments that are getting planned for this in between time, or that hasn't really materialized?
I think there's some things that are being discussed. Obviously, I can't say because none of it is public.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people are trying to figure out, especially when Div 2 is happening. I think some tournament organizers are going to have stuff at least online where teams can still play, can still practice, and have some good viewership. Whether it'll happen or not, I will find out. I'm actually not sure myself.
Gotcha.
But I do know that some of these ideas are being circulated.
Gotcha. Yeah. More Dota, more is more good. Is that a thing? Let's all right, let's move on to what we always like to end the podcast with. We've got our Ask Reddit segment. An interesting one this week. There's a couple different ways you can take this question. Again, if this is your first time listening, we just like to go to the Ask Reddit, pull off a random question. It kind of leads to a little debate and discussion that is fun. We always encourage everybody to leave a comment or just kind of let us know your opinions on these things because it's fun to have takes. This week's Ask Reddit is, what is the dumbest argument you've ever had? There was a few ways that people went with this. There was a lot of them in the Ask Reddit was just like an argument that you got in with your like significant other or your brother that was like they were just wrong. I took it more into like you had like a what was your dumbest debate that you've ever had with somebody about a dumb topic. I'll start us off with this because I picked this one. So the dumbest argument or that I've ever been involved with was, I'm going to ask you this question, right? You let me know what you think. Are fish wet when they're in the water?
Yes.
You think so?
It's a weird question. I'm not sure how to answer it.
Well, I mean, it's the question. Are fish wet when they're swimming around in the ocean? Are they wet?
Are we technically wet when we're underwater? I
Well,
feel like it would be the same answer.
Yeah. Okay. When you're swimming underneath the water, you're fully submerged. Are you wet?
I feel like I have to look up the definition of.
So here's my thing, right?
Sure.
Here's my whole argument, and I got into an argument with my brother about this and some other people, and I legitimately think that when you're fully submerged in water and when fish are swimming around, that they're not really wet. They're just in water, right? How do you know you're wet? Like if I'm walking around and my shirt spill water on me, it's because compared to the air around me, this material is wet, right? It's wet versus dry. To be wet, you need to be in an air dry environment, right?
Huh.
That's what constitutes you have a wet towel. But if you're fully submerged underwater, your hair has this like very unique kind of feel to it when you're underwater versus when you're out in the air. It feels wet because you're comparing it to dry air. So that's an argument that I got into, and I kind of stand by to an extent. Did I blow your mind a little bit there at all?
A little bit. I feel like I've heard this before, somebody talk about it, but I would just brush it off and not really think about it. But you've actually risen some pretty good points, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you look at like the Webster's dictionary, you go that whole route, I think my argument gets denied by the definition, because I think it says like saturated with water or covered in water, and you could argue a fish is covered in water. But also like water molecules when you're underwater aren't really attached to you. They're just like free flowing on and off of you, right? Versus like when I'm out, I'm walking around and my shirt is wet, those same water molecules are stuck in my shirt. Versus like when you're one with the water, those water molecules are being constantly exchanged and being moved around. Like they're on you, they're back in the ocean. Like there's nothing to keep those same water molecules on you. Versus when you're walking around, you have a wet shirt on, it's the same water molecules. That's because that's what wet is.
Oh man, you've given me a lot to think about. Like, when I go back, I don't know.
Yeah,
like my life's been changed.
So yeah, I mean, we don't need to come to a conclusion on that. I would be interested to hear other people's opinions on that one, but that's my take. And I've been involved in an argument, and it's a pretty dumb argument because there's really no consequences to it. But
I feel like you kind of swayed me.
That's good.
That was a good argument.
What's the dumbest argument that you've ever had? That's a tough one. Which way did you take this question?
I took it very differently.
That's okay. I anticipated that.
So, yeah, this was when I went to Vegas, and I was pretty young. That was for a competition a while ago. I think I was like 20 maybe. So I wasn't 21 in Vegas. So I was kind of unlucky, right? I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, tough.
Anyways, I ended up taking a cab back from like a show. At least I could go to like a Cirque du Soleil show, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I knew you kind of had to. I guess this goes back to tipping again somehow.
We always end up on tipping.
So I was going into this cab, and it was this lady, and she was. I could tell she's like actively trying to make conversation and be engaged. Maybe to kind of like earn a tip type of thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe she's just bored.
Yeah.
Whatever. So at the end of the ride, I'm like, okay, whatever. She put in some effort. it's pretty normal to tip a little bit. And back then, I wasn't like swimming in money. I was I was young. I didn't make much,
Yeah.
right? So I gave a bit of a tip, maybe 10 to 12%, something like that.
Okay.
So maybe it's slightly less than the average. I don't know. I thought it was fair, right? And she kind of looked at me and she called me boy, and started arguing as to why I'm not giving a bigger tip. And I felt like that was the premise of this whole situation is incredibly dumb,
Yeah.
right? Because that's the whole point of tipping. You technically kind of don't have to do it, but I don't know. I felt very, very annoyed at that whole thing. And then I told her, like, hey, I know you were trying anything. I was trying to be nice in the beginning. I know you were making conversation and everything, but this is still a tip.
You
right?
brought that up to her? You said, "Oh, I thought you were making conversation."
I phrased it in a way where I made it seem like she was being nice and stuff. But that whole premise. So I chose this because I think the whole premise of the situation was incredibly dumb. And I felt like this should never have happened.
She was trying to strong arm you.
Yeah, she kind of was. Maybe because she was like, this guy's kind of young. Maybe she smelled weakness.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think that's exactly
I didn't give her
what
anything
happened.
else than what I originally gave, though. But
I would have taken the tip back.
Yeah. Okay.
At that point, you can't complain about the tip.
I wasn't gonna go back for it, but so very different way I took that one.
I think in a lot of tourist areas, there's definitely that like strong arming the not regulars in the area. But yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
very uncomfortable. I would have immediately like walked away. I mean, this is kind of rude.
It was pretty uncomfortable, but I also felt like I had to stand up a little bit for myself.
Absolutely.
At least.
No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. You can't get pushed around like that. And you were what? You were like 20. You said.
Yeah, I was like 20.
What tournament were you there for?
It was I think I don't remember. It was ESL One Vegas or something. We had stand-ins in that tournament. Actually, AOI was one of them. And then we somehow made it to the finals. I think it was very random. And I got to see Vegas, which was pretty cool. Just that I couldn't do too much.
Yeah. Well. One more quick one. I have this ongoing argument with my brother. We were like 12 years old. We were at our friend's house, and we were playing in the basement. It was like me, my brother, and my two friends. And there were in their basement, they had this like giant yellow like exercise ball, like bouncing thing that you could like kind of jump on. And as a kid, we would just like jump on it. And their basement was like concrete, but there was like a layer of carpet, but it was like still hard. Like it was carpet, but you could tell it was like hard underneath. And my older brother was bouncing around on it, and he fell off it, and I guess he hit his head. And he then proceeds to like lay on the ground and like not move for like 5 minutes, and like I'm pretty sure he would like foamed a little bit at the mouth, like a little bit. And,
oh my god!
Yeah, and to this day we still argue about it that he was 100% faking it. And he's like, no, dude, what are you talking about? I wasn't faking it. This argument comes up like once every year. My argument was like, if you're a kid and you bump your head, right? Like you're going to be like, oh, okay, let me be dramatic about it. And if you're going to fake being knocked out, you're going to not move. And you're going to like, who foams at the mouth? Like that's a thing you do to fake it as a kid. I will like if he actually was knocked out, like how hard do you have to fall to actually be knocked out for like, a minute or two, right? And then the foam at the mouth to me was the dead giveaway that it was fake. But he's still today, even this past weekend, I visited him up in Boston, and I brought it up, and he contested. He thinks it's ridiculous. I don't believe that he actually was knocked out.
It sounds like he'll take it to the grave. This argument's never gonna die down.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He totally did everything that a 12-year-old would do if they think they were supposedly knocked out. I mean, maybe he was. I don't know. He's fine now today. We'll find out.
Those are impossible to solve too. When somebody's not willing to give up, you know, like what actually happened. Those are really funny because you can always argue about it in a fun way again.
Yeah, exactly. I think, brothers and siblings, they're very good backdrops for ridiculous arguments. because you never want to be wrong to a sibling. You always want to be right.
That's true.
That'll do it. You got to get some sleep, man. You got one more practice day tomorrow, and then you got 2 big games, man.
Yeah, big things coming up this week.
So, last week of the DPC, we will find out about major spots by the end of the week. Very exciting stuff to look across all the different leagues. We appreciate everyone, as always, hanging out with us. Don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment. Let us know if you think fish are wet. Really would appreciate that. And if Tal should have took his tip back from that lady. But yeah, that'll do it for this week. I appreciate everyone hanging out, and we will catch you all on the next one.